To solve this inequality or to find the solutions of this inequality, I still like to draw my line through the inequality, and I have to distribute through 2 times 4x is 8x, 2 times 3 is a positive 6, is less than 4 plus 8x. Now I want to get the variables on the same side, so I'm going to take this 8x and I'm going to move it over here, and I move it by subtracting it. And when I do that, what happens is my variables cancel on both sides, and I'm just left with 6 is less than 4. And anytime your variables cancel on both sides, whether it's an inequality or an equation, you have to check to see if this is a true or a false statement, because your answer is either going to be infinitely many solutions or no solution. And so, is 6 less than 4? That is a false statement, and because it's a false statement, there is no solution to this inequality. Now, if it were to be a true statement, 3 is less than 4, then it would be all real numbers. I said infinitely many, but I meant all real numbers. And so because this is a false statement, it's no solution. If it were a true statement, it would be all real numbers. Number 14 says, what is the graph of the function rule? Okay, before we graph anything, we always have to make sure y is by itself, and y is by itself. So then we need to determine what m is, which is your slope, and what b is, which is your y-intercept. M is always the thing connected to the x, and b is always out to the side. So m is 2, or 2 over 1, and b is negative 1. This is your y-intercept, and this is your slope. And we always plot our y-intercept on the y-axis before we use our slope. So we'll go down 1 and put a point, and from there we rise 2 and run 1. And this is a positive slope, so it should go in a positive direction. So from my y-intercept, I go up 2, right 1, up 2, right 1. And then I can continue the pattern by going in the other direction. And so the graph of this function rule is just a line. Make sure that you put arrows at the end. And that's number 14. Number 15 says to find the slope of the line. Well, before you can find the slope, you need to find where this line will cross 2 points exactly on their corners. So it crosses right here at this corner, and it crosses at this corner. And we have to actually draw an L shape to calculate our rise and our run. So the slope, which is m, is rise over run. And I can see that this line is facing this direction, which is a negative direction, so I know I'm going to have a negative slope. And then my rise is 1 block down and 1, 2, 3 blocks over. So my rise is 1 and my run is 3, and we know that it's negative because of the way that it's facing. So your slope is negative 1 over 3. Find the slope of the line that passes through these points. Well, to find the slope, you have to know the slope formula. Y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. And it helps if you go ahead and put your minus signs so that you don't get confused with negatives. And I'm going to label my x sub 1, y sub 1, my x sub 2, y sub 2. And then I'm going to just fill in. Y sub 2 is negative 3, y sub 1 is 4. X sub 2 is negative 1, x sub 1 is negative 2. And yes, I do have minus and negative there. And so some people will just put 1 minus, even though it technically should be minus a negative, because this 2 is negative. So in the top, in the numerator, I get negative 7. In the denominator, I get positive 1. And so when I simplify that fraction, I end up getting a slope of negative 7. Write an equation of a line given slope and y-intercept. Well, the easiest way to write that is slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, and I substitute what I know for m, and I substitute what I know for b. So your answer to that one would be y equals negative 3x plus 8. Number 18, write an equation in slope-intercept form that of the line that passes through these points. Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to find the slope because we want to write it in slope-intercept form and we don't know the slope. So I'm going to use my slope formula and I'm going to find the slope before I do anything else. And so I end up with negative 2 minus 4 over 9 minus 3, which is negative 6 over 3, negative 6 over 6, which simplifies to negative 1. So the first thing I do is I find my slope, which is m, and I use it. So that's what m is. Well, the next thing I need to do is I need to pick either one of these to plug in for x and y. And I'm going to pick the one that does not have a negative. So I'm going to pick the first point. Let me move this over. And so I'm going to plug in everything I can to y equals mx plus b. I know everything but b. Y is 4, so I'm going to put a 4 there. M I just found to be negative 1, and x is 3, and I don't know b. So I get 4 equals negative 1 times 3 is negative 3 plus b. I need to get b by itself, so this 3 needs to move over by adding it. And so I end up with b equals 7. Well, now that I know m and I know b, all I have to do is substitute, and I get y equals negative 1x plus 7, or y equals negative x plus 7. And that is slope-intercept form. Either one of those will work. Write an equation in point-slope form for the line. Well, point-slope form is y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. And so what I have to do is I label this x sub 1, y sub 1, because it's my first point. And I literally just plug it in. Y minus, well, y sub 1 is negative 1, equals m is 2, times x minus, x sub 1 is negative 5. But I can't really have minus a negative and minus a negative. So my final answer in point-slope form would be y, not equals, but y plus 1 equals 2 parentheses x plus 5. And this is considered point-slope form. Number 20, to find the x and y intercept, to find the x-intercept, we plug in 0 for y. And to find the y-intercept, we plug in 0 for x. And this is where I've told you that you could just mark out the y and solve to get x, and then mark out the x and solve to get y. Because when you mark it out, it just really means there's a 0 there anyway. But I'll show you. To find the x-intercept, we plug in 0 for y. So I have 4x minus 6 times 0 equals negative 96. Well, 6 times 0 goes away, and I'm left with 4x equals negative 96. I have to get x by itself, so I divide, and I get x to equal negative 24. This is your x-intercept. To find the y-intercept, I plug in, I'm going to come over here and do the y-intercept. I plug in 0 for x. So I have 4 parentheses 0 minus 6y equals negative 96. Well, 4 times 0 is just 0 anyway, so I'm left with negative 6y equals negative 96. Divide by negative 6. And I end up with y equals 16. So your y-intercept is 16, and your x-intercept is negative 24. Do not write it as negative 24 comma 16 because this is not an ordered pair. This is actually where it crosses the x-axis at negative 24, and then it crosses the y-axis at positive 16. Number 21, what is the simplified form of the expression? Well, I see these are exponents, and so I need to make sure I don't have any outside exponents because I want to get rid of outside exponents first, and there's not any outside ones. And so what I can do is this really means just negative 4x squared times 3y cubed times 2x to the ninth. And I can multiply anything. So I can multiply negative 4 times 3, which is negative 12, times 2, which is negative 24. Well, then I look at my x's. I have an x squared and an x to the ninth. And they're on the same level. When they're on the same level, we just add them. So I get x to the 11th. And then I just have this y to the third to bring down because I didn't have anything to put it with.